From the station working for you, this is WRTV News at Noon, streaming now.
Thursday has been a soggy day so far. It's been rainy across central Indiana since the overnight hours, and we still have a little more to come before we start to dry out. And that heavy rain made for a really tricky morning commute. We tracked several crashes involving semis in the overnight and morning hours, including this one that jackknifed along southbound I-65 just past MLK and West Street. Contents and debris from the trailer spilled over the guardrail, creating a mess in the parking lot below and delays for drivers heading downtown. So a little bit of a frozen turkey mess out there, Todd, as folks are heading into the downtown area. But what's it looking like right now if people have to head out for their lunch hour?
You know, it's a little calmer now. We're in that little break that we talked about earlier this morning on Good Morning Indiana, Lauren, with the heavy rain shifting off towards the east. A little bit of a break, but we're not out of the woods yet. More rain is going to head in our direction. But here locally, the good news on Storm Team Radar, as you see here, just a few spotty showers remain north of Greenfield towards Muncie, Winchester, and then into Wayne County near East Germantown and into the Richmond area. The steady rainfall to the east. You look back to the west, though, and there's more rain that is going to be heading in our direction. I'll show you the bigger picture. This is the remnants of Zeta now pushing towards Washington, D.C. with all that rain that it's emerged from. This is another area of low pressure that's going to have to spin and rotate through the area. So as we go throughout the afternoon hours, we do get back into a light, steady rain, especially south of Indianapolis. It's just some spotty showers to the north, but don't put that umbrella away. But just know that the rain's not going to be as heavy as it was this morning. But overall, still a very damp and dreary day. Temperatures in the 40s and 50s. This is where we stay, Lauren, throughout the remainder of the afternoon, so you'll have to bundle up as well.
Todd, thank you. New this midday, Metro Police are changing their policy on the use of chemical agents on peaceful protesters. It's part of the police department's settlement of a lawsuit filed by demonstrators who took to the streets of Indianapolis repeatedly over the summer months. The ACLU of Indiana has sued IMPD on behalf of Indy 10 Black Lives Matter and 3 individual protesters. They argued their First Amendment rights were violated when tear gas and other chemical agents were used by police to help break up some of the protests downtown.
Demonstrators in mourning deserve safe and secure places to gather without the threat of state-sanctioned violence, especially prematurely and without provocation. We will continue to hold elected officials and the police force accountable for what is said and done to the community.
Well, the settlement means that Metro Police will be trained to avoid using chemical agents unless clear warning is given to demonstrators and unless there's an imminent threat of injury to the officers. Also new this midday, IMPD will no longer be a defendant in the federal wrongful death lawsuit filed by the family of a police shooting victim. A federal judge has removed the police department from a lawsuit filed by the family of Drejon Reed. The judge says the police department could not be sued due to the previous court rulings that protect city agencies from some lawsuits. The city-county government remains a defendant in the lawsuit, as does Officer DeJour Mercer, who shot and killed Reed after that police chase back in May. Indiana has set yet another record for new COVID-19 cases, far exceeding the previous record. Now, moments ago, the state health department reported 3,649 new cases of the virus. That's the first time the state has surpassed the 3,000 case mark in just one day. The state has also passed 4,000 deaths since the pandemic began. 33 additional deaths were reported today. The positive test rate also still climbing in our state. The 7-day average is now at 14% for unique individuals. And Marion County will not be bringing back measures to help reduce the number of COVID-19 cases for now. The mayor and the county's public health director says that they may be coming soon if cases continue to rise. Mayor Joe Hogsett says the Marion County remains under that 10% positive test threshold that governed the earlier business closures and other mandates. He says that if the community doesn't take mask wearing and social distancing seriously, the county may have to take more action. We'll have more on what the mayor and Dr. Virginia Kane from the health department had to say on our website. It's all at WRTV.com. Our coverage of Democracy 2020 continues now. Early voting in Marion County has been plagued by long lines at some of the early voting locations. The Marion County Election Board will vote this Friday, it's tomorrow, on a dramatic remedy. It's a plan that would make Lucas Oil Stadium an early voting site this weekend. Our own Ray Steele tells us that the battles over satellite voting has been going on for a long time here.
Satellite voting in Indiana's largest county is a relatively new concept, unlike most other counties across the state. Marion County has fewer satellite voting locations than many smaller counties. The reason, according to the head of the Marion County Republican Party,
we voted on the plan that the clerk's office came up. The staff and them thought that would be adequate, and so we were more than welcome to go along with it.
But that's not the entire story. Indiana state law requires that any change to early voting can only happen if a county's election board approves it unanimously. Election boards have members of both political parties. In 2008, Marion County opened 2 satellite early voting locations before that election. That was the year Barack Obama carried Indiana in the presidential race. Obama won the state by just under 29,000 votes. Starting with the next election in 2010, efforts to expand satellite early voting failed because the Republican member of the Marion County Election Board voted against it. Republicans on the board also blocked early voting expansion in 2012, 2014, and 2016. Their reason? They said that operating the early vote sites was too expensive. However, most other Indiana counties were expanding satellite voting with no objections from either political party. In 2016, when Republican Donald Trump carried Indiana, Democrat Hillary Clinton got fewer votes in Marion County than Obama got in 2008, 29,000 fewer votes. In 2017, Common Cause Indiana and the NAACP sued the Marion County Election Board in federal court for discrimination against black voters over the refusal to add early voting locations. The next year, federal judge Sarah Evans Barker, a Ronald Reagan appointee, ruled in their favor. The election board then came up with the current early voting sites as part of the settlement agreement in that lawsuit. The chair of the Marion County Democratic Party told WRTV they wanted more early voting sites, but that Republicans would only agree to the 5 operating now. Regardless of what happened in the past, if the election board votes unanimously on Friday, Marion County will, for at least 2 days, have the biggest early voting site in the state's history. Working for you, Ray Steele, WRTV.
Ray, thank you. We reached out to Scott Zarazi, the executive director of the Marion County Republican Party. He told us he was not part of the negotiations over the early voting sites in 2018, but he said it was his understanding that the county could only budget for the 5 locations that were approved. Zarazi also says he favors the use of Lucas Oil Stadium as an early voting site, saying, quote, "It is perfectly appropriate, and I think the board will move forward unanimously in a bipartisan fashion to put that plan into place," end quote. Well, the long lines at polls have not stopped Indiana from continuing to expand on their record of early voting numbers this year. The Secretary of State's office says that we are now officially more than halfway into the amount of voter turnout that the state saw for the 2016 presidential election. Almost 1.4 million Hoosiers have already voted, either in person or by mail. That's 29% of the current number of registered voters in the state. A reminder, we do have live coverage of everything happening next Tuesday on Election Day, live right here on WRTV. We'll look at all the key races, plus we'll have an analysis and the results as they come in. Look for us on the WRTV app on your favorite streaming devices like Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV, and Android TV. We'll also provide you with live results throughout the night here on WRTV with a complete wrap-up on the news at 11. Well, it was already a major problem, and now experts say it's even bigger because of the pandemic. Next, what you can do to help slow down on what's becoming one of the leading causes of death in our country. Todd.
It's been a wet day here across central Indiana, and the rain's going to continue, but not quite as hard or widespread as it was earlier this morning. That is the good news, but don't put that umbrella too far away. If you do have plans later today, we'll time out the rainfall heading our direction for this afternoon and this evening. Coming up when the News at Noon continues right here on WRTV.
Drug overdoses were already one of the leading causes of death here in the United States, and now experts say overdoses are on the rise, in part because of this pandemic. Our own Kelsey Anderson talked to a mental health expert about what's being done to tackle the problem and how you can help.
Studies show a rise across the country in overdose deaths, but here in Marion County, according to PubMed.gov, we are seeing a 47% rise in overdose deaths since the stay-at-home orders were put in place. Beatty says the main problem right now is isolation and the lack of social interaction.
Family members, community, work, whoever it may be, aren't being able to see the telltale signs that a lot of people look at, or they start looking at themselves. With the isolation, it's really led to a lot increase of the issues, but also a bigger increase of them not being able to be identified or have access to the resources available.
He says since the pandemic started, they have trained more than 500 people to help those interested in recovery now on the digital platform. If you want to get involved, visit this story on the WRTV News app. Working for you, Kelsey Anderson, WRTV.
Kelsey, thank you. Another change that happened this summer, the FDA is now requiring new labels on opioid medications that recommends healthcare professionals discuss the availability of naloxone to their patients. Well, we know schools have been learning to deal with COVID-19 on the fly this year. Next, how one school district came up with an idea to prevent the spread that's also now helping businesses in the area. And let's take a live look outside here from our tower camera view to the west on this Thursday. You can see the White River out there in a distance and cloudy skies settling in over Circle City. Todd Clausen will tell us when our rain's going to be done and what we can expect for our Halloween weekend. That's all coming up here on the News at Noon. Welcome back. Schools across central Indiana are facing challenges daily, trying to remain open and avoid the spread of COVID-19. Our own Nicole Griffin visited a school district out in Hancock County that's finding ways to quickly isolate students who show symptoms. It's a solution that's also now benefiting one of their local businesses.
Did you wash your hands today? Are you washing your hands before you eat? Are you wearing your mask?
This is the conversation Ashley Lusby has with her two children who attend Mount Vernon Community Schools.
There is not a day that goes by that I don't think I remind them of the situation, not in a way that creates fear, but in a way that just encourages them.
One of her daughters is in 8th grade at Mount Vernon Middle School. According to the state's COVID-19 dashboard, 5 students at her school have tested positive for the coronavirus this year. Right now, Lusby's biggest fear is
having to go back into quarantine or for my middle schooler to miss out on middle school sports and activities.
Leaders at Mount Vernon Middle School say teachers and students have responded well to expectations like social distancing, wearing masks, and sanitizing. When someone does show symptoms, they utilize this new temporary quarantine room.
Middle school, due to the unique size and how tight it is in their clinic, we needed space for multiple quarantine rooms.
So therefore, when we have a student who has COVID-like symptoms, flu-like symptoms, and they need to go home, we can quickly isolate them.
Hamilton Exhibits, based out of Indianapolis, started developing the rooms after seeing a need for schools to safely reopen. The marketing company specializes in trade shows and has been hit hard by the pandemic.
These are offered at cost. So Hamilton is not making any profit on these. It is simply to keep our people employed and to do a good service and get businesses and schools. Let's get this economy back up.
Lusby says knowing that the temporary quarantine room is available to help reduce the spread of the virus eases some of her stress and anxiety when it comes to her child's safety.
Being able to immediately separate someone, you can't really replace that because we don't have the building space to dedicate an entire room to a situation like that.
Working for you in Hancock County, Nicole Griffin, WRTV.
Nicole, thank you. Mount Vernon schools do have a health and safety plan for COVID-19. If the combined student and staff absentee rate hits 20%, county health officials may have to move school to a virtual learning for a short period of time. The district says that out of the more than 4,900 students and staff members they have, about 1/2% have tested positive since the first day of school started back in August. Well, what used to be a Hurricane Zeta is responsible for at least 2 deaths now. The storm made landfall in Louisiana as a Category 2 hurricane. The eye wall eventually passed directly over New Orleans, where one of the deaths from the storm was reported. Other deaths reported in Mississippi and Georgia as the storm trekked across the South. More than 1 million people in several states were without power at the height of that storm. And Todd, we know we got a lot of rain here today. Did that have anything to do with that Hurricane Zeta?
You know, it's kind of a combination of things. We had the hurricane go through the southeast, like you mentioned. Then we had an area low pressure off to the west. The jet stream was kind of right in between, and the 2 storm systems kind of caused all that rain to make its way through central Indiana this morning, even though the center of Zeta was well off to our southeast, getting a little bit of a break right now from the rainfall with just a few spotty showers over here in the Muncie area towards Portland and Winchester. But that's really just about it. But as far as the rainfall totals go, from what we've seen already throughout the day, as expected, about 1 to 2 inches here in southern locations. We had this little band that went from Winchester through Muncie, Hamilton County, north side of Indy, back into the Greencastle area of about 1 to 2 inches of rain. And then on either side of that, you notice a half an inch to the north. Any way you look at it, it was a pretty good soaking. And we did have some flood advisories that are posted across southern locations still that we'll have to keep an eye on. But the bulk of the real steady and heavy rainfall is now off in Ohio. Here's the big picture. And let me get out of the way for you. This is what's left of Zeta moving towards Washington, D.C. And it's kind of joined up with all the rain that we had earlier. We are getting a little bit of a break right now. And then you have this area of low pressure that's here that is going to have to rotate throughout the remainder of the afternoon and into the evening hours. So while we won't see the steady and heavy rainfall like we saw this morning, you're still going to want to have the umbrella handy or the rain jacket if you're going to be out and about as we continue to deal with these scattered rain showers off and on throughout the afternoon and evening hours. Eventually by about 7, 8 o'clock, the rain should be coming to an end, and then overnight tonight will start to clear out. That is the good news. As far as any additional rainfall, the blues you see here, that could be another half an inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch as you work your way north into this green area. Well, we're only talking about maybe another couple hundredths to 1/10 of an inch of rain. So southern locations will continue to have the bulk of the rainfall from this point forward throughout the remainder of the day. But it is dreary out there. The temperature 45 degrees, the wind not helping out of the north at 15. So not only is it damp and dreary, that wind is making it feel like only 38 degrees out there, even though the temperatures are in the 40s and 50s. We won't really go up much more here throughout the day today, only about 47 degrees. Tomorrow is a brighter day. We start the process of drying out, but it's a chilly day, starting in the 30s, ending in the mid-40s. And as we look ahead to the weekend, Saturday's not a bad day, 56 degrees with mostly sunny skies. Turn the clocks back 1 hour Saturday into Sunday. Sunday's cool and breezy with a high of 47 degrees. Monday morning, 27. That's the low temperature. A hard freeze across the area. Only a high of 45 on Monday. Election day. Good news is if you are in line to vote, the sun will be shining and temperatures eventually climbing into the mid-50s.
All right, Todd, thanks so much. Still ahead here on the News at Noon. We've got a Throwback Thursday for you. We'll look back to the time when one county was forced to park its police cars and have their deputies saddle up. You're watching the News at Noon on WRTV. Welcome back. Thursday means it's time to throw it back as we dig into the WRTV archives here. A lot of local governments are having budget issues these days. Well, that was also the case during the energy crisis of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Back in 1980, Clay County Sheriff's Office ran out of gas money in its budget with more than 2 months still left in the calendar year. So that forced deputies to get creative. The Sheriff's Office parked all their cars and borrowed several horses to conduct their patrols. Former WRTV reporter Marilyn Mitzel says that the issue then went to the Clay County Council, where then Sheriff Wayne Lucas told them he needed another $2,500 in gas money to get through the year.
The council had to do some juggling, but they took the money from the general fund.
Gotta keep these cars going, and that you got. I don't want to sit on this council and say, well, I'm not giving you no gas, because you can't do your job if you don't have nothing to work with.
Sheriff Lucas went back smiling to tell his deputies he was given the extra money.
I think with what it does, it'll take care of the bills we got, and then it gives us $1,000 per month, and that should handle us through the next 2 months.
Well, you can read more about this story and see all of our Throwback Thursday stories online at WRTV.com/history. Todd, nothing says a throwback story like a conference room filled with cigarette smoke just billowing in the background there. Gotta love that.
Hard to believe. That's the way it used to
I
be,
know.
right, Lauren? All right. We'll still deal with rain here throughout the remainder of the afternoon, but the heaviest and most steady rain is now off to the east. A dry stretch of weather starts tomorrow, takes us right through Halloween, right through the start of November, and through Election Day. That's the good news. It'll be bright, but it will be cool with temperatures running below normal.
All right, Todd, thank you. And thanks for making WRTV your choice for news. Come back and join us for the news at 5. Stay dry. Have a great afternoon.